With the Azerbaijan Grand Prix done and dusted, you can be sure of one thing: F1 2023 packs a punch. You're in the right place if you missed out on the adrenaline-filled race or just want to catch up with the drama on and off the circuit. So let's recap for you. The weekend was quite hectic, with the practice session followed by the qualifying, the sprint shootout, many red flags and other drama. We had a weekend with the sprint format change, a Ferrari podium and a Pierre Gasly's car catching fire. Oh, and don't forget about the fight between Max Verstappen and George Russell. We'll get into that in a bit. First, can you subscribe to our channel and give a quick tap of that bell icon so we can be sure that you're kept in the know of all of the exciting F1 racing action. Cheers, mate. Okay, let's get into it. Sergio Perez of Red Bull delivered a flawless effort in Baku to win the 2023 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. There's a reason they've nicknamed him the King of the Streets, right? The Mexican driver started out strongly, passing Charles Leclerc before taking advantage of an early safety car and then passing teammate Max Verstappen. Despite being put under severe pressure by his teammate for a few laps, Perez pulled away to win his second race of the season and his second Grand Prix in Baku. Verstappen finished in second place, 17 seconds ahead of Leclerc, who landed on the podium for the first time this season. So you can be sure that after a dismal start to the season, Ferrari's pressure will temporarily be lifted by that top three finish. Then came Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll, George Russell, Lando Norris, Yuki Tsunoda to round out the top 10 in Azerbaijan. But there was something different about Perez as he entered this sprint race in Baku. He quickly passed Charles Leclerc early on to take over P2 before an accident involving Nick de Vries and AlphaTauri brought out the safety car. Perez then took up the race lead as he made his first and only pit stop because his teammate Max Verstappen had pitted just before the collision. Following the restart, Perez's Dutch teammate put a lot of pressure on him initially, but he was eventually able to fight that off and pull away to win his second race of the year. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix victory, in Sergio Perez's opinion, doesn't change anything in his quest for his first Formula One World Championship. Chico is still recovering from the 5th place finish in the Australian Grand Prix that put him behind Max's podium. Verstappen still stands first in the 2023 standings, but the King of the Streets is only 6 points behind. And there's plenty more racing to come. Putting the Red Bull duel aside for a moment, the FIA is still faltering, and here's why. The frightening events involving Esteban Ocon and members of the F1's travelling media crew at the end of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix were the most recent in a run of close calls involving the FIA decision-making. Esteban Ocon of Alpine started the Azerbaijan Grand Prix from the pit lane due to a setup change in the Parc Fermé conditions, and as a result, he decided to start the race on hard tyres. The French driver almost finished the entire race on the same set of tyres, but due to the regulations, all drivers must make at least one pit stop during every race. As a result, Ocon entered the pits on the final lap, and there was almost a complete catastrophe, as crews and photographers were dispersed across the pit lane under the impression that it was already closed. He quickly slowed down to avoid a devastating collision. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but significant concerns will be taken with the FA about how such a situation could have happened. Thank God the crowd dispersed just in time. People sprinted to avoid the rapidly approaching Alpine, saving everyone from what might have been a serious incident. It's high time the FIA stops worrying about the unimportant issues and concentrates on recovering a sense of control over its operations. Like, why would the representatives let cameras into the pit lane in the first place? Now, Carlos Sainz has acknowledged that during a mentally stressful Azerbaijan Grand Prix, he was on the verge of colliding with another car or losing his Ferrari completely. The Spanish driver felt uneasy during Sunday's race since he'd struggled all weekend in Baku and just could not keep up with teammate Leclerc's performance. In fact, Sainz felt somewhat relieved to finish the competition in 5th place. When asked if he understood why the weekend had proven so challenging, he responded saying that there had just not been enough time to dig deep into the data and make the necessary changes that were needed. But he's confident that together with his engineers, he'll do some digging and return to form in time for Miami. And the one thing that's been on everybody's mind, after finding it difficult to pass each other during the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Formula One drivers questioned the decision to shorten the DRS zone on the main straight. Now, the FIA stated at the beginning of the year that the first 5 races on the calendar would have slight changes made to the DRS zones. You see, when they implemented new technical regulations designed by F1 to make it easier for drivers to follow each other, they did so based on overtaking data they collected the previous year. In Baku, the DRS zone on the start-finish straight was reduced by 100 metres from the previous year. But after the Grand Prix and sprint race weekend, many drivers complained that passing was too challenging. Lewis Hamilton commented, "We've always had excellent racing with the DRS where it was, so I'm not exactly sure why they did it. But it was already too late by the time you switched the DRS on." Then, Lando Norris reported that he found it pretty much impossible to overtake during the race. Given the speed in a straight line, the DRS being far shorter than last year did not help. And get this, before the race, there was discussion about whether to shorten the DRS zone even further, according to Norris. In fact, he claimed that in the driver's briefing, every driver questioned it. Some drivers claimed that in the second year following the implementation of the new aerodynamic regulations in F1, overtaking has grown more challenging. That's why Logan Sargent feels that the FIA and F1 should reconsider the choice to shorten DRS zones. After two primarily procession-focused races in Baku, only some were persuaded that the alteration to the DRS zone was to blame. Toto Wolff, team manager of Mercedes, doesn't think so. However, George Russell voiced his worries about the decision to shorten the DRS zone and the lack of consultation surrounding it before the weekend even started. But here's the thing about Baku. The track's ability to create mayhem is essential to Baku's Formula 1 race, because the races aren't very good here. But they are very capable of being wild. It's because they rely on fleeting moments of insanity. We think that the Azerbaijan Grand Prix would be just too boring without that. So it makes a suitable Grand Prix venue, and it's great to have a variety of tracks with various difficulties and danger levels. If Formula 1 only had tracks that were ideal for racing, it would likely turn into something more like NASCAR. So Baku is an excellent addition to the schedule because it offers its own factors and challenges. For instance, the barriers are incredibly unforgiving, the conditions are usually tricky, and the contrast between the lengthy straights and the extremely tight bends makes setup quite challenging. The one massive error in this race was Nick de Vries miscalculating a turn. He ended up hitting the wall with his front left tyre, breaking the suspension of his car and ultimately knocking him out of the race. This undoubtedly contributed to Sergio Perez's victory. Beyond losing Max Verstappen the lead, it appeared to only slightly annoy a few other drivers. There was no red flag, no restart, or anything else that has historically saved boring races. It was similar to the 2016 race's inaugural running, which got relatively negative reviews. There shouldn't be a need for many overtakes for a Grand Prix to make it exciting, but there should be at least a chance that anything could happen, right? Well, I guess in the end, could it be that the street tracks just aren't a good fit for this generation of F1 cars? What do you think? Let us know in the comments section. And finally, what's a race weekend without a little drama between the drivers? And this time, Max Verstappen called George Russell a head. Even though Verstappen's Red Bull teammate took first place, attention was focused on the Dutchman's collision with Russell on the opening lap of the sprint. After the race, he went looking for Russell and confronted him about how they ended up together. Verstappen was unusually slow off the line and got into it with Russell, while pole sitter Charles Leclerc got off to a strong start and began to pull away. The two collided at a few turns, with Russell driving the Dutchman crazy as they bumped into each other and brushed the circuit walls. Eventually, Max was able to regain position and passed up Russell for good. There was quite a bit of damage done to Max's car, with a hole being ripped into the side pod. It didn't seem to affect Max's overall performance. But what do you think? With an undamaged car, do you think that Max would have been able to pass Sergio and take first place? And by the way, Russell has already disclosed his plans to meet with FIA executives. His agenda? There will be many conversations with the FIA to understand their point of view. He believes that they can't let someone in the race control office completely dictate how the race weekend turns out. Guess everyone agrees, seeing how recently we've witnessed quite a few crazy decisions being made, no? Now, super curious how you think it all went. Let us know in the comments section below what you thought of the race weekend in Baku. Thanks so much for watching. This has been F1 Racing Now, your inside track to all things F1. We'll see you in the next one, racing fans.